children of the trams. It was nearly summertime on the other railway. All the engines were working very hard, which made them very angry, even more so than usual. You see, life in the big city nearby is very dirty, very stressful, and overall as much fun as taking a bath in a snake pit. So, at every opportunity for a holiday, the citizens pack their bags and evacuate the town for as long as they can, even if it means using the other railway. One morning, the engines were relaxing at the sheds. The sun beamed down happily as they looked out onto the empty yard. "Well, that's it," beamed Bowler. "Everyone's gone now." "Alone at last," purred Diesel. "Nothing to do for 3 weeks but sit here and get our buffers tanned." "Peace and quiet," agreed Spamcan. Everyone sighed contentedly. However, their slobbing was suddenly interrupted when they saw their drivers rushing towards them. "Rise and shine, you lot," shouted one. "We've got work to do."
"What are you talking about?" spluttered old Stuck-up. "And what are you doing here? You're supposed to be on holiday too."
"Not anymore," called another. "Now come on, we've got trains to pull."
"There must be some mistake," protested Derek. "The schedule clearly says that we—"
"Well, the schedule's out the window," said his driver. "Now come on, to work." It took a full half-hour before any of the engines would move, but a few persuasive words, mainly relating to bodily harm, got them going. The diesels roared angrily to the big fat station and found the place overrun with...
"Children!" gasped Bowler.
Yes, children. Short, loud, rude, snot-nosed children everywhere. They were running around the platforms, jumping in trucks, destroying the offices, skipping along the bridges, and throwing a weedy man in a pinstripe suit around like a rag doll.
"It's the Thin Git!"
exclaimed old Stuck-up.
"Sir, what the hell's going on here?"
"The children!" cried the Thin Git as he landed in front of them.
"The adults all went for the holidays, but they left their bloody children behind for some peace and quiet."
Suddenly, the kids caught on to the diesel's presence. Dozens swarmed in their direction and began clambering all over them.
"Get off!"
growled Spamcan.
"What's the paint job?"
"They're in my cab! They're in my cab!" squealed Bowler.
"What do we do then, sir?"
asked Derek as one child began picking his nose for him.
"The only thing we can do," replied the Thin Git. "Keep them entertained. That's all they live for. And if we don't..."
The diesels looked nervously at each other. It looked as though their holiday had come to a very abrupt end. The next few days were a living nightmare for the engines. From dawn till dusk they ran up and down the line, desperately trying to keep the children happy. Diesel had to shunt trucks of toys for the toy shop in the big fat station. He didn't even know there was a toy shop there before. Old Stuck-up took them to football matches and kiddie concerts that made his metaphorical ears ache. Bowler was reduced to pulling tankers of ice cream and milkshakes, and he was lactose intolerant too. Spamcan hauled fairground rides and crooked carnival folk on tours of the railway. And poor old Derek was in charge of seaside runs, the blazing sun causing him to overheat in double quick time. Twice he actually caught fire. It was quite impressive. One night, the engines decided they had finally had enough.
"If I see one more Beanie Baby, just one more, I think I'll explode," roared Diesel. "Something has to be done." "What?"
called the deafened old Stuck-up. "I agree," sniffed Bowler. "My allergies are going haywire delivering those fatty dairy products for those brats."
"You think all that's bad?" snorted Spamcan. "Try lugging a roller coaster around while a bearded lady's giving you the eye."
"So hot, so hot,"
moaned a half-melted Derek.
"Then it's agreed," said Diesel. "Tomorrow we shall unite as one and get rid of those troublesome toddlers once and for all."
"But how?" inquired Spamcan. "We're completely outnumbered.
There's only 5 of us and about 10,000 of them last time I checked. We'd be flattened in a frontal assault.
Diesel grinned. Who said anything about attacking? He said. We're going to beat them with our brains.
What?
Cried Old Stuck-up.
Achoo!
Sneezed Bowler.
That beard,
shuddered Spamcan.
So hot,
whimpered Derek. Well, maybe just brain singular, grumbled the shunter. Early next morning, Diesel explained his plan to the other engines, their crews, and the thin git. They all agreed and set to work at once. By the time the children arrived at the big fat station, the longest line of coaches they had ever seen had been set up. All 5 engines headed the mega train, and perhaps, most unusual of all, they were smiling.
hello,
tooted Bowler. Splendid to see you all.
Because you've all been such wonderful guests,
said Old Stuck-up.
we're taking you all to the harbour for an extra special surprise,
continued Derek. All aboard, called Diesel and Spamcan. Too young, stupid and greedy to even consider something wrong with the picture, the children swarmed into the coaches. When every last child was on board, the cavalcade set off. It was a hard journey, even with 5 engines. The coaches were extremely heavy, and the children's wild antics inside caused them to shake violently. Occasionally, they'd even pop out the windows and bombard the diesels with anything they could get their grubby little hands on. But the engines didn't mind. They knew that soon it would be all over. At last, they reached the harbour. An enormous ocean liner was waiting for them at the station.
Okay, everybody out.
Bellowed Spamcan.
Your surprise or whatever's in that thing. Go, go!
Like wildebeest, the children stampeded from their coaches and on board the ship. When the last one scurried inside, the harbour master bolted the door shut and yelled to the captain. With a long, low toot, the liner slowly pulled out from the docks and sailed off into the horizon. It worked! It worked! The engines cheered and tooted triumphantly. Good riddance to bad rubbish, scoffed Diesel.
Well done indeed, Diesel,
said the thin git.
But where was it you sent them anyway?
The shunter smirked. Oh, I think they'll like it. And that's how children became the dominant species on the island of Sodor. Tits and Twats. The engines were being cleaned and polished for the day. And by cleaned and polished, I of course mean squirted with fairy liquid and sprayed with the hose. Old Stuck-up was going out first. He grumbled as the workman scrubbed the detergent off his face. "We've got visitors today," said his driver. The other engines rolled their eyes. "We get 'em every day, you plonker," grunted Spamcan. "But these are special," said the driver. "One takes moving pictures, and the other writes books."
Moving pictures? Snorted Old Stuck-up. Oh, come on. Just because we're anthropomorphic locomotives, that doesn't mean we don't know what a bloody film is. Don't patronise us.
"Stick an oil drum in it, you," snapped the driver. "The controller really wants these visitors treated well, and that sort of attitude won't help matters, so mind you behave."
Oh, come on, snorted his engine. What's the worst that could happen?
The visitors were media folk. One an author with a greyish beard, the other a producer with bright red hair. They arrived in a little red car at the big fat station. They shook hands with Old Stuck-up's driver, who had done his best not to pull his own hand away and blow a raspberry. "Our controller," he told them, "says you can ride with me in the cab if you like." "Thank you," said the greyish author, "but may we come later, please? My colleague and I would like to examine the main line before the weather turns." Then they talked to Old Stuck-up and told him how smart he looked.
These visitors, he thought, know at least how to speak to engines, with unquestioning flattery.
He rolled away, feeling even more stuck up than usual. Whenever the line came near the road, crossings, bridges, stations, the car's faulty steering, there the two media folk were, squinting into binoculars and video cameras. Old Stuck-Up began to find this rather upsetting.
They might wave at an engine, he complained, or at the very least bow down in his presence.
They can't worship you and get good pictures, said his driver. Old Stuck-Up knew this well, but he didn't give a toss. He wanted his praise, dagnabbit.
Boop, boop.
The little red car spluttered past them once more, but Old Stuck-Up made no reply. They'll be at the drain next, said his driver. The drain is a filthy side road. It runs for a short distance alongside the railway and a chemical plant. There is no fence, as fences cost money, and we all know what the thin git is like with cash by this point, don't we? The greyish author sat in the car while the red producer waited with her camera. She shot her footage, jumped back in, and off they went, racing the train to the drain's end.
For Ford's sake, can we stop soon?
Spluttered the car.
All this chasing is getting me hot and bothered. My circuits are fusing like nobody's business.
Unfortunately, just as they passed Old Stuck-Up, they went through an acid puddle.
Sloosh!
Acid rain splashed over the diesel.
Ah!
He exclaimed, but the media folk didn't know. They were ahead and out of the car. Frowning, they waited for Old Stuck-Up to catch up. He didn't smile for the camera.
They did it on purpose,
he snorted crossly and fumed all the way to the last station.
They splashed me! They splashed me!
He hissed as workmen tried to neutralize the burns.
Some film star I'd be, looking like the elephant engine.
He growled crossly when the red producer climbed in his cab for the journey back. The greyish author would have come too, but the acid puddle had dissolved one of the car's tyres, and he had to get it fixed.
Driver oughtn't to allow her, after what she's done,
growled the diesel. Suddenly, he let loose a burst of noxious fumes.
Whoosh! I know, he thought, how to pay the ginger tart out. It's a lovely plan, a delicious plan. I only wish the beardy git was there too, he said. But he said it to himself, and even if he didn't, his driver and the red producer were too busy flirting with each other to notice. Old Stuck-Up ran nicely, only 10 minutes behind schedule, until they reached the chemical plant again. The dark clouds were swelling, and the diesel deliberately dawdled. "Come on," said his driver, pouring on the gas. This was just what Old Stuck-Up wanted. "Tits and twats, tits and twats," he shouted, letting loose an enormous burst of noxious fumes. The gases rose high into the air and combined with the chemical-induced clouds. A few seconds later, an absolute torrent of acidic liquid poured to the ground. Showers ate through Old Stuck-Up's roof and began flooding his cab. The soaking did not stop until the driver and the hysterical producer cranked the engine to full speed and escaped the industrial complex. The thin git soon found out what had happened, after the red producer smacked him upside the head with her handbag. "Your bloody engine nearly killed me!" she screamed, an old oil barrel worn over her half-dissolved dress. The greyish author was furious too. "Your lack of safety precautions ruined our car," he protested. "And when I asked your men for assistance, they just insulted me and threw heavy objects at us. This is the worst railway we've ever had the misfortune to visit." The thin git was livid. He sent Old Stuck-Up to the shed, or what was left of him after his acid shower. "You are a very... Oh, Jesus Christ, I can't even think of an appropriate insult, I'm so mad," he bellowed. "They splashed me," faltered Old Stuck-Up. "That's no bloody excuse," roared the thin git. "I invited these media people here to try and convince everyone that this was a nice, normal railway, and what do? Nearly drown one of them in an acid bath. My only consolation is that things can't possibly get any worse."
Unable to form another sentence, he turned on his heel and stormed off. Next day, the engines were being prepared for another day's half-hearted work. Old Stuck-Up was still complaining as the workmen put him back together.
"Those visitors were nuts," he told them. "They came and said sorry before they left. Then I said sorry they were so ugly, and then I blew my last fumes in their faces. They know bugger all about engines," he went on. "The beardy git said he was going to write something or other, and promised to do something to all of us. What do you think of that?"
"I think your mouth should have melted too," grumbled Diesel. The engine's bitching was suddenly interrupted when the thin git approached the sheds. "What are you doing here, sir?" asked Derek. "Sir?" The thin git said nothing. His eyes were wide and his face was pale. Well, paler than normal. "Spit it out, sir," said Bowler. The thin git held up a note in his quivering hand.
"It's the inspector," he said simply. "He wants to conduct an investigation next week. We're being sued."